much for joining us during this momentary distraction of simple amusements and magic. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Herren as Faust, and I want to welcome everyone on this Friday evening to Faust Company. We are quite excited today, and I'm very happy to see all of you here today. It's always a pleasure to entertain and start your weekend off with magic, and I do hope you are all doing okay. I can see that there are a couple people out there leaving some comments. Danny, Ivo, it is a pleasure that you are here. If you are out there, please leave us a comment, say hello, and we hope that you enjoy. And so, ladies and gentlemen, today we have a featured guest, and he will be coming on shortly. So please stay tuned, because this guest best exemplifies what Faust Company is about, and the reason why I was inspired to do this live stream to begin with. But first, I see Nick is out there. Nick Sorensen, he's my friend from another podcast, and he does BuddyCast, so please check him out. Ladies and gentlemen, I would love to share something with you all today. Today, while I was practicing, I had a notion. My magic is inspired from a lot of sentimentalism. And what I realized is that magic can truly be inspired by beauty, but it can also be inspired by things that are peculiar. And that reminded me of the notion and story that this story that I recalled was strange at the surface, but beneath that surface was a hidden meaning. And if I may, I'd like to share it with all of you. You see, this story was written by one of the great philosophers of magic, and his name was Eugene Berger. And I'm sure many of you out there know who that is. You see, Eugene Berger was also a master at bizarre magic, which I find truly interesting. You see, the story that he wrote was passed on down to my teacher, Jeff McBride. But Jeff later on would hand down that story to me. And tonight, I would like to keep the legacy of Eugene and pass on that story to you all. And I do that for a reason, and I will share that with you after I tell the story. So please indulge me. You see, this story happens in the medieval times, and it sounds like this. Highlights in the history of the world, told with a pack of playing cards. Chapter 19. The Inquisition, always a Friday favorite. The King of Clubs shall represent an exceedingly efficient device of medieval torture. The Nine of Hearts, a confused member of the community falsely accused of the heresy of witchcraft. And I shall play Torquemada, the Inquisitor, and you all shall play Torquemada's assistants. A very important role indeed. But first, the device is prepared behind the victim's back, thereby causing witless anxiety. Our inquisition begins. Do you confess to the heresy of witchcraft? No, no. Perhaps this will loosen your tongue. Actually, the victim's tongue is removed so that the angry screams do not detract from the merriment of the moment. You would think that the victim is inserted into the device. Oh no. The device is inserted into the victim and rubbed up against his very spine. On a good day, you could get them to turn inside out. But on a very good day, you could get them to turn outside in. Inside out. And outside in. You could get them so bewildered, so confused, that they were facing one way and the other at the same time. And a quick snap of the spine, and this is my favorite part, you could almost hear their bones breaking. Oh, look, the victim is beside himself. But look, one half is facing in, the other half is facing out, and they will only match if you turn the head 180 degrees, and they match perfectly. And that is how they search for the truth in the Middle Ages. A story told by the great Eugene Burger. You know, I had wondered what that story meant and what inspired Eugene to write a seemingly macabre story. And then it struck me. Perhaps Eugene wanted to remind us that magic can teach us a great lesson in our past mistakes. And more so, magic can remind us not to commit those mistakes again. And so to Eugene Burger, may he continue to inspire us from beyond. I do hope you enjoyed, ladies and gentlemen. And so it is my great pleasure to introduce our featured act of the night. And I do hope that all of you enjoy. You see, our featured act is a PhD at Fulbright College. He has performed all over the world to include Harvard, Yale, and the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. He is a researcher of Indian magic, and it is with great honor that we have him here to share his wisdom and his magic here at Faust Company. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you the great Shreeyash Palshikar. Welcome, Shreeyash. We are happy to have you here, and the stage is yours, my friend.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and happy Friday. I'm going to begin with one of the most classic things that you might see if you see a traditional Indian street magician, otherwise known as a jadoowala. They begin their show with a damru drum. And this is the drum that Lord Shiva is sometimes said to have played when he dances his dance, the Tandava dance. And when people hear the drum, then they know that there's a magic show about to begin. Or perhaps, in the past, a bear taming act or a trained monkey act. But those are illegal now in India today. So I'll start with that. And And now that we've set the mood, of course, the other instrument that is most common, and in fact, in many ways resembles a bagpipe, but is the bean. In Marathi, it's called the pungi, or many people just call it the snake charmer flute. So there's a gourd up here. There are two bamboo sort of things down here. There's a reed instrument, and we'll play the famous song that was popularized in 1893 at the Great World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, that I think most people know quite well. You'll recognize it. All right. Yes, it's sometimes known as the Hoochie Coochie dance song. And all of this was to introduce what we have here, this small basket. And what we wanted to try to think of is what could be inside of the basket. What might be inside of the basket that the Indian magician would have? And, you know, some of you might think that there is a snake, a live snake inside the basket, which is possible, happens sometimes on the streets of India. Let me take a look here. This is, in fact, one of the oldest tricks in the world was performed with a snake at the court of the Pharaoh when Herren turned his rod into a snake and it ate up the snake of the Pharaoh's magician. This is, of course, a rubber snake. Don't worry, no animals are harmed in this performance. There is, however, something else inside the basket. Let's take a look if we can. One more thing that could be inside the basket. It looks like a snake. It is long, it is thin, and this is a confusion that has plagued thinkers for thousands of years. It is not a snake, it is a rope. And I'm going to attempt for you the most famous rope trick in the world. Yes, that's right, the Indian rope trick. I was born in India and held the citizenship for some years, so I think I qualify as an Indian. We've got the rope, now we got to do the trick. We have to hypnotize the rope and make it stand up in the air in a way that seems impossible. Now, of course, if I simply hold it like this, that doesn't seem very impossible, right? Yeah, it doesn't. I agree. It would be better, of course, if I was holding it with only one hand and the rope was standing mysteriously up in the air. I will now attempt that. It is known as Jadoo. It requires years of asceticism and celibacy and practical practice. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, release one hand. And yes, I'm holding it with one hand and it is standing straight up in the air. Okay. For those of you that have not been drinking enough yet tonight, you're thinking that's not a very good trick. You would like to see me grasp it at the bottom. And I agree. So I will try that for you just tonight here on this strange and wonderful day or evening. On the count of 3, 1, 2, and 3. Yes, it is in fact standing straight up. And the beauty of this is that you can see above, below, and all around it. Now, I have to confess at my age, it doesn't last as long as it used to. So we're going to say on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, and it goes back to being an ordinary piece of rope. Okay. And just because this is a special night, I've prepared for you something even more special that also involves a basket. Yes, indeed, one of the classics of Indian magic performed on the streets of Delhi, Mumbai, when I was on the Fulbright Fellowship in India in the summer of 2019. I saw some amazing performances of this particular trick. And to help me with this trick, we're going to bring out Princess Zara. Now, you may know that there are a lot of Vegas tricks in which a magician puts a random showgirl into a random box. But this is the trick that they all began with, in which the magician puts his own child into a basket. Now, let's see if Zara can get into the basket. Zara, you just climb up here. We will help her into the basket. Okay, good. Why not fit in there? Okay, she's having a little bit of trouble here. We're going to have to give her I'm gonna have to give it a lid. Oh, it's a long way. All right, let's try to do this the magic way, the way that I saw the magicians, the Madaris, do it on the streets of Delhi. People like Irshad Muhammad and Shadruddin Badruddin. What they did is a little bit different. Yes, we put a cloth over, and suddenly the girl disappears. Now, this is a strange and mysterious thing indeed. And sometimes people get a little suspicious. What could have happened? Where could she be? Well, on her magical journey, I can tell you that if you're going to India, the first place that you probably land is the old Mughal capital of Delhi. And that would be one good place to go. My favorite city in all of India is, of course, Mumbai, another wonderful place to visit. Now, if you're only going to those two cities, you're missing out on some of the excellent things to be found in Calcutta, one of the hearts of Indian magic scene. So we would have to also get to Calcutta. And then we wouldn't want to leave out South India. Oh no. Chennai is a lovely place to visit almost any time of year. And we would want to get to Chennai as well. So ladies and gentlemen, the girl has left the basket. Or has she? I don't know. Let us see. If we bring the little giant swords back and the little girl can survive the ordeal, it is possible. Just possible, but I'm not sure how. Let's check. All right. Zara, come back. And if we're lucky, whoops, hey, she survived. Look at that. All right. Now, that is the way the trick is generally done on the streets of India. But because this is a very special night, we're going to show you something amazing that nobody else does. And that is this. Not just a small girl, but in fact, in addition to the small girl, a large boy. So this is Anand, ladies and gentlemen. Anand and Zara. Take a bow, take a bow, take a bow. All right. Thank you, and I am Shreeyash. All right. Okay.
Thank you so much, Shreeyash. Wonderful job. Everyone out there watching, please, a round of applause for Shreeyash Palshikar.
Oh, thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful twist to a very classic illusion, Shreeyash.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, we're just going to change up here to the talking portion, or the still no performative, but sort of
right. The benefits of a virtual show, right?
Yeah, I see something weird going on here with this.
You definitely have quite the viewers watching. I can't keep up with all the comments coming in, Shreeyash, and I just wanted to point that out to you. I'm not sure if you see it at all. But
I'm not right now, no. But if there's, I don't know if you ever take questions for me, or if you have, however you want to do it. I'm all yours.
If anyone out there has any questions for Shreeyash, we please post them, and then we will ask them here. But Shreeyash, to start it off, you have, from what I had read, is a fusion style of magic, mixing Western and Eastern. Could you give, if someone has never seen your performance before, could you give a brief description of what they would expect or see watching your show?
Yeah, well, in some ways, this is a pretty representative sample. So, I mean, things like the Indian rope trick or the Hindu basket or a snake charmer or a snake in a basket are what you might call very traditional. They are traditional Indian tricks, and they're also in the Western imagination sort of associated with this mystical image of India. So what you might say is I kind of try to meet my audience halfway. Like, I've gone to India, I've met the traditional magicians and also modern style Indian magicians. And my own uncle was a modern style Indian magician. But I also grew up in the US, so I kind of understand, Aladdin and like the sort of deep history of the Western imagination of India as this mystical place. I guess, like I said, I try to meet people halfway and kind of teach them something along the way.
It's wonderful how you mix a little bit of a history and you take us on to a journey into another place. And I appreciate that very much. I enjoy your storytelling. You are a storyteller, Shreeyash. And, you know, I wanted to ask you, and I think someone has a question, Nick Sorensen, who's starting off in magic himself.
Oh,
How did
wonderful.
you get into magic, Shreeyash?
That is a good question, but I like to change it around a little bit and say, how did magic get into me? Because my one of my ancestors, I'm biracial, so on the white or American side of my family, one of my ancestors was actually a prophet. Who founded a religion or a cult, you might say, in Walla Walla, Washington. He was alive at the time of the Mormons, and he went west. And he had a long white beard, and he called himself whatever it was, God or something. My Indian grandfather was a priest. He performed rituals for people. My Indian uncle was an Indian magician. So I guess I would say I was born 13 days after Halloween. I mean, like, what else could I do with myself?
Right. So everything about your origin story is quite mystic and influenced by mystical people, to say the least. So it's not surprising that you were influenced to follow this path. There are quite a number of questions.
Oh
So
my, okay.
I think I'll go through those for you. Here's
Sure.
one for you. What is the most dangerous trick you've performed, Shreeyash?
I mean, for my kids, I suppose it's putting them in a dark
Yeah.
basket and sticking swords around them. For me, the bed of nails is getting more dangerous every year. And
Right.
it's funny that we're talking about these things because I actually have some prints of, let's see, like this is a print of an Indian magician doing the bed of nails.
Right.
How well that reads. So I occasionally do that. I used to do it a lot
Oh,
more in
wow.
my 20s and a lot less nowadays.
You know, I know we can have a long discussion on Indian magic influence on the Western world. A lot of the magic that we see is influenced from India. Is that, I mean, or actually originates from India? Is that correct?
Yes, yes, yes. In like in terms of actual method and in terms of
Yes.
plot, let's say. Like I was just pointing out, I mean, how many illusions do you know where, the girl goes in some form of a box and there are some form of
Yes.
blades or swords or something put into her, but the Hindu basket, as far as we know, that the problem with it is that we don't know exactly when. Like the Indian street magicians didn't like write down, in 1492 we first did this,
Right.
but it's an ancient trick. And yeah, I mean, the suspension, levitation types of things trace back to India, like steel balls from the mouth, the needle trick. As you
Yeah.
said, the mango tree trick inspires Robert Houdin to do the blooming rose bush. There's a lot of very direct parallel or inspirational moments, let's say, from I mean, not just from India, from China or Japan also. But
Right. I
when
I know you spend a great deal of research, Riyash, in Indian magic. Would that be something that we can find or read on the internet somewhere?
Oh, that is a great question. I'm working on a book right now. So, yes,
Wonderful.
I was very lucky to receive a Fulbright Nehru Fellowship in summer of 2019. I was in India meeting the last of the living traditional street magicians. And then, as soon as it's safe to travel, I'm going to go back to kind of see what's happened to them. Because, I mean, not to be a downer, but if we think it's been hard on us, if you're a poor illiterate, traditional Indian street magician, yeah, I mean, I'm in touch with some of them, and they've had a really hard time of it.
Right. Shreyash, I have a question for you here. I'm going to
Oh yeah,
post it up. This one's from Micah Cover. He's a friend of mine. What do you want audience to learn about India they might not know before? That's a great question.
yeah, that is a good question because I think nowadays people actually are knowing more and more about India, kind of broadly speaking. Like a lot of people, like are familiar with the food or have seen a Bollywood movie nowadays or something like that. One of the things that I'm really excited about in my research, and I think it's something very few people know, is that the first Indian magician came to America 200 years ago.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so, what seems like this exotic thing over there is in fact something that's been here in America on our stages for literally 200 years now. So I think that's something, to find that magic is connecting people for so much longer than we might think. I mean, well,
Yes.
you probably know, and a lot of people who are sort of into magic know that there were Indian magicians at the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago, where Houdini, got inspired and actually learned maybe the needle trick and things. But to think that in 1818 there was
Yeah.
an Indian magician. I mean, there was no vaudeville in 1818. I don't quite know where he performed, but he was
Right.
here.
That's what I love about magic. There's so much that we don't know, especially with the origins. All we really know is the modern side, or at least the golden age of magic. But everything prior, is a mystery indeed. There
Yeah.
is a question here, and I'm beginning to feel like it. We're on a class with you or a lecture, which
It's
is
okay.
which is great. It's kind of a change from our normal format, but I love this. This one's from Jessica Claiborne.
Okay.
What relationship is there with Indian magic and Middle Eastern or African magic?
Yeah,
Influence
that's
or trading? Yeah.
That's a super good question. I mean, India, in a sense, a lot of the things that we see in Middle Eastern and Indian, and like the Silk Road, it kind of explains a lot of this, right? So
Yes.
ideas and people and things were traveling around for thousands of years along this path. And so the very word jadoo is a Farsi or Persian word, and that
Yes.
is the word that is in Hindi and Urdu that sort of means performing, magic. And there are a lot of interesting similarities, I think, between the like kind of Middle Eastern style and the Indian style. Although a couple of the Indian magicians I talked to, they're Muslims, and they said, according to the real strict version of Islam, magic is considered sinful. It is considered haram. But it's our ancestral occupation, so we kind of do it anyway.
Right. Right.
But whereas in the Indian and Asian context, like in a sort of Hindu Buddhist world that thinks of the world as illusion or Maya, I feel like there's kind of more of a celebration of like a performance that is based on illusion, in fact, can be something that is almost like a metaphor for the universe. And so there's not this fear of using religious metaphors in
Right.
the kind of Asian performers, I think.
Shreeyash, I love that notion that we celebrate life or the concept of an illusion as something that we should celebrate. I love that notion. Here is a question for you, Shreeyash. Are there books you would recommend on the history of magic from India?
Yes, really good one that just came out from Oxford University Press, I think about 2 years ago now. Why am I blanking on the name? John Zerbrzicki wrote it, and it's called Empire of Enchantment in America, in the American title, and the Indian title is like Jinns, Jaduwalas, and Jugglers. So that's like a very comprehensive history. Lee Siegel wrote a book called Net of Magic that came out in the 90s based on a lot of ethnographic field work with particular troupe of magicians in Delhi. And then Peter Lamont wrote a great book just on the Indian rope trick called Rise of the Indian Rope Trick. So if you're really into that trick, I mean, it's kind of fascinating because he argues that trick was basically invented by a Chicago newspaperman. Which, again, we could have a whole separate discussion on that. He's a good
right. Right.
It's very interesting, though.
I think Penn and Teller had some documentary discussing that topic alone, and just quite the history behind that trick in itself can be a huge discussion. Shreeyash, I want to discuss some of your social media. I know that there are people out there wondering where they can find you.
Oh, sure.
And so I have a website for you. Okay, so www.palshikar.com.
Yep.
And they could find more of your bio and your information there.
Yep.
And do you have any shows that are coming up, Shreeyash, that you want to mention to the audience today?
Yes, I have a very exciting project that I'm working on with the Lantern Theater in Philadelphia, and this will be a taped show that we're going to tape in their theater space. So not like in my living room, like with actual lighting and sound and all that. And we haven't set the date for release of that program yet. But something like the Derek Delgadio in and of itself, I mean, it's that idea.
Yeah.
It's a live taped theater show, and I will definitely put it on my website when we've taped it. I mean, I would guess we're going to tape it in March or April, and it will be they're going to edit it, and it'll probably be available sometime in May. But like, I wouldn't quote me on that because it's actually their, we're collaborating, but it's their project.
Well, I know you're on Facebook as well, and I encourage people to go follow you on Facebook, and you can also provide updates on there as well. And so I want to make sure your book, just another, just to recap on your book.
Yeah.
Is there an estimated date time that we can expect it to be out?
I mean, I would love for it to be out around this time next year. But some of it sort of depends on when I get back to India, because I feel like for that final chapter, I want to kind of catch up with those traditional street magicians and see how they've survived the pandemic. And, well, actually, to be honest, what I'm trying to do is give them some online performing opportunities that they can earn from. And so, so that it won't be a totally sad ending, because I hate to say it, but, this ancient kind of oral tradition could almost be about to end, like right now, I mean, because most of these guys are like, well, we all we know how to do is perform on the street, but that doesn't seem like something we want our kids doing for a living. And why would we, like, we want our kids to like go to school and become accountants or something. And so you go, well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's always this sort of stigma with I guess if you mention that you're pursuing magic or you're a magician as a career, it's, at least in my culture, the Philippine culture, that's not really a prestigious thing to do.
Yeah. Oh, no, trust me.
It's actually admitting that you're accepting a harder way of life, by doing that. Shreeyash, I could talk to you all day, and obviously the audience is quite fascinated, throwing questions after questions. Look, if you're out there watching this show and you have questions, Shreeyash is a PhD at Fulbright College. Am I correct?
Yeah.
You do research in Indian magic, and I'm sure you do research in magic and just in general. Yeah. Please reach out to Shreeyash and ask him questions and follow him on his Facebook. Shreeyash, I always ask my my featured guests to send the audience a last thought, a positive thought. Is there anything you want to say to the audience before we close out the show?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would just kind of leave us with this idea that magic is something that can help us build connections in a time when a lot of politicians are trying to build walls between us.
Yes, absolutely. A great, great prelude to this year. And Shreeyash, it has been my pleasure. We would love to have you back on, maybe just to even talk about your research into magic, and maybe answer questions, because it seems like people have a lot of questions for you.
Sure.
But it's been a pleasure to have you. And we hope that you come back here at Faust Company, Shreeyash. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'd be happy to come anytime.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our show. It has been an honor to have Shreeyash Palshikar on the show. My name is Chris Herren as Faust, and we hope you have a great weekend, and we will see you here again soon. Good night, everyone.
All right, good job, little buddies.